You're listening to the Voices of Recovery podcast. This is a special episode featuring a recovering addict. Hi, I'm Sophie X. I'm the host and producer of the Voices of Recovery podcast. We're joined here today by Bryan. Hi, Bryan. Thank you so much for doing our readings for the Just for Today and for the SPAD.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Happy to have you on, and thank you so much for being on this special series of our predecessors.
Thank you.
So first of all, when is your clean date?
My clean date is November 19th, 1984.
Okay, so you have been clean for over 40 years at this point.
Yeah. If I play my cards right, 41 this November 19th, a day at a time.
That's amazing. So this special series is about getting to know what early recovery was like back in the day when there weren't very many meetings, when there wasn't a super big foundation for NA, and how people have contributed to creating the program that we know today. So I'd love for our listeners, first of all, to get to know the man behind the voice, and for you to tell us a bit about your story, and for you to give us a little bit of insight about what it is like to have been around for that long and how the program has evolved.
Sure. It'd be my pleasure. When I first got clean, the fellowship of NA in New York was about a year and a half old. We would announce anniversaries, like Frankie from the Bronx is celebrating. There was a lot of interborough travel. For example, I do have a copy of the 1984 meeting list somewhere on my phone. I have it in my office and I took a photo of it. I think there were about 6 in the Bronx, maybe 8 or 9 meetings in Queens, and about, I think, 10 or 11 meetings in Manhattan. It wasn't as convoluted as it is now in the greater New York metropolitan area. I can't speak on other parts of the country. It was such a great time because we had a way of socialization that's really, I see, not available today. Like we had dance clubs where everybody would get together on the weekends, like the How Club in Manhattan on St. Mark's Place was the hub of activity. And when I tell you, everybody from New York, Long Island, New Jersey, and Connecticut on the weekends, everybody went to the How Club. Hundreds and hundreds of people. It was the old electric circus. There was such a camaraderie and a great vibe to the place. And over the years, I don't see that anymore. And that's kind of, in my opinion, a shame, but, it's evolution. We made meetings in Brooklyn like you couldn't. There would be nights of the meetings, like if you lived in the 5 boroughs, say on Tuesday night, there wouldn't be a meeting on Long Island. You might have to go to Queens, or you had to go wherever you had to go to get your recovery. It just wasn't always business as usual. Like, oh, I'm just going to stay on Long Island and I'm going to have meetings every night of the week and every day. It wasn't like that then.
Like it is now. So now we're so lucky to have our choice of like 4 or 5 meetings in the same evening. And back then it was so sparse.
Yes, it really was. And when I got in, I'm going to just speak a little bit on the evolution. I've had every commitment from the bottom up. I wanted it. I wanted to change my life. I wanted it all. I had a great sponsor. I wanted the spiritual success. I wanted the financial success. I wanted to make something out of myself. I was educated. I was learning a trade and an occupation that I didn't want to mess up. My first commitment, like a lot of us, is the coffee commitment. Then I chaired 2 meetings 2 days in a row, 2 of the biggest meetings in Queens, actually, which was Candlelight Lifeline Every Friday night it was a candlelight meeting, and then Saturday afternoon, Clean and Serene, which is still around. And then I would catch resentments because in the summer on a Saturday, I was the only one there. The secretary wasn't there. All the officer commitments, where were they? They were at the beach. It's served me well over the years. I don't know if a lot of them are still around, but I can only account for my journey and my recovery. I did hospitals and institutions. I went into Rikers Island, into facilities, to try to carry the message that was so generously and mercifully given to me.
Tell me a little bit more about what it was like to see the evolution of NA. So, had you ever participated in other fellowships prior to coming to NA?
No, I didn't. I was very fortunate enough I went into a rehab. I was a semi functional addict, and I had to go into a rehab to save my position at work at the time. I was in a very prominent union, and I went for 30 days. And how I picked my fellowship, outside meetings were brought into the rehab, and the ones that I was exposed to happened to be NA. And even upon leaving, initially, I was a little bit still up in the air about what I wanted to choose for me. Funny story. It was very simple. I had a very tough sponsor, and he agreed to sponsor me. And he said, I'm putting Coke here and alcohol here. Which one are you going for first? I said the Coke. He said, that's where you're going. It was that
Go
simple.
to NA.
It was that simple. It really was. I definitely made the right choice. I was very out of control. I was never arrested all of my active addiction, but I got arrested my first year of recovery, in recovery. And it wasn't like anything bad or violent. We could consider it a white collar crime. And it was involved with a check that also had my name on it. And it was a whole stupid thing. But he was very tough on me. One time he called me and he asked me, are you going to go to a meeting later? And I said, of course. I said, what meeting you going to? He goes, well, there's this meeting in Brooklyn. And he gave me the address. And I said to him, I don't know where that is. And he said to me, fuck you. And I'm on the phone and I'm like perplexed. I'm like, what? He said, you are full of shit. You're going to use, and you don't want this.
Mm.
And I'm like, how do you say something like that? What do you mean I don't want? He goes, you make believe there's drugs at this meeting. And if you're not there, find another sponsor. Boom. Hung up the phone on me. And I'm like, I am pissed. I'm like, this mother effer. How dare you do that to me? And of course, I found the place, and I can't really visually pull up the image, but I remember walking down steps, and it was a big Brooklyn meeting, and it was on a Saturday night, and there had to be, God, it felt like 100 people there. And I walked down the steps, and I catch his eye, and he just looked at me and pointed downwards, like to sit down. And he told me, learn to listen and listen to learn. And that was really, I was lost. I needed another way to live. I had to be shown how to live because my usage was so out of control. My life was out of control.
So, at that point, were you married? Did you have a family? Tell me more about your situation when you first got clean.
At that time, I was coming out of my first marriage, which I was involved in when I was active. I married a nice Italian girl, but the problem is, it was in the 70s, and nobody told me that I couldn't have three girlfriends while I was getting married. The only most important thing at my wedding is I wanted to make sure I didn't run out of blow, which I didn't. And I was out of control. In retrospect, I'm sick. I have a disease. And it was full blown and active. And one day I came home, the door was pried open, and I looked in, the whole house was emptied out. There was just a chair, a plate, knife, fork, and a spoon. And her family came in and emptied everything out. So from there, I went on a very big run. My addiction has a lot to do with sex, being promiscuous with women, and just out of control, out of control. And I went on a big run. And I mean, I was in a building next to the union I belonged to, next to union headquarters. And I literally would come home from the partying, and some of the girls I would party with were strippers, and they would be camping out on my front lawn in lawn chairs waiting for me to come home. I mean, it was just non-stop partying after my wife left, the first wife. I just went on a tear that was ridiculous. And it manifested itself a long time prior to that. I always was involved in, we'll say it's the wild side. And I dated a woman whose family owned two of the biggest pornography theaters in Times Square. And she was bisexual. She would always say, "Hey, Bryan, I'm coming over with a couple of my girlfriends, and I'm like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah, it was my existence with women was like that for a long time. Like I got to live a very opulent life in that way, sort of like a rock star with no touring or being in a band. It was just absolute
The
insanity.
lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, that whole lifestyle. Like I had a friend of mine who was the owner of a record company. And we used to go to the gym not to work out, but to literally clean ourselves out of the coke, to open up our nostrils so we could continue doing it. And just not, I'm not talking for a day or a week, I'm talking months on end. The existence was, my life was centered around the use, getting, and using of drugs and basically women too, if I'm being honest about it. It was like a drug to me.
And so you said that in order to keep your job, you had to come into recovery. So did you stay after you were introduced to NA?
No, I didn't. I was in the rehab. There were about, it was a place out east in the island, and there was about 30 people. And back then, I was told that there's 30 of you at this table. Only one of you will be clean after 5 years, which
Mm.
I thought was a very negative message. And I said to them, listen, guys, I said, I'm here just to get clean, to save my job. My girlfriend's coming to pick me up, and she's got a joint in the car, and I'm going to get high the second I get out of here. I was that arrogant and lost that I said that to the people at the table. I'm not like you. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't have a problem.
I
That's
don't
not
have a
me. I'm not an
problem.
addict.
Have you read my book? I'm okay. You're not okay.
Right.
Okay. Went home and I actually did that. And that was part of that big run that led up to the wife leaving and the whole emptying out of the apartment and everything. And it's an interesting story how I came into the rooms after that. One of the most, in my opinion, underestimated tools that we receive is the meeting list from that rehab and the outside people that came in. I had my meeting list, and there was one guy in particular. I remember his name is Anthony. I don't know where he is today or anything. And one day I woke up November 18th, 1984. I was still living in the place, where it was a co op where my first wife had left. And I just woke up and I looked and I said, I'm not going to be this person. I came from a broken home, single mom who I was so blessed to have. I could go on, there's so many stories. And I made the call to Anthony. I said, Anthony, it's Bryan. You remember me? He did, of course. I said, listen, I can't stop using. I said, I flushed everything down the toilet. Baba, it was late in the day. It was sort of like at night. And he said, listen, come and meet me tomorrow at the meeting. And that's how it started for me. I went back. I made the decision myself that I just wasn't going to destroy my life. I wasn't going to be like the father who abandoned my mother and myself, who was a touring musician, who was a drug addict, who was not a good man, who never helped us or helped my mom. And I made that decision that, I wasn't going to be that person. I wasn't going to be that man. And it didn't stop with me not trying to hold on. And I was that man for a long time. But on that day, that's when I made a decision. I'm going to say to turn my life and my will over to the care of the NA program and fellowship.
So you had the seed planted in the hospitals and institutions, went back out and said, I know that there's a better way. And so you made the decision to come back.
Yes, I was one of the lucky ones. We use the empty chair and key tag as a significant, I think personally it should be mentioned at every meeting what that stands for. And the newcomer looks at that's the addict who wasn't fortunate enough to be as blessed as we are with a chance to have a life. My first sponsor, his name is Ralph. And he told me promises that are not in the book. And he told me that. And he goes, I guarantee you, everything I'm telling you is the truth. And all of the things he told me were the truth. He said, your life will never, ever stop getting better a day at a time. So long as you don't pick up and use, I don't care what happens, how painful it is, don't use. He goes, and when you think it can't get any better, it's going to get even better. Just have faith in God of my understanding. And that was a very easy concept for me because since I'm a little boy, I have a book from when I'm 2 years old, and I would walk to church every Sunday morning with my mom. So my understanding of a God of my understanding is crystal clear. I never try to put it on anybody. I don't talk about it because it's not for you. It's for me that I know that. And my higher power's presence in my life has saved my life so many times. It is indisputable that his presence is with me even as I speak right now.
Talk a little bit about the evolution of that higher power. I mean, you came into the program at a time when there wasn't so much literature and so much guidance, right? There was no step working guides. There was no, just for today, spiritual principle of the day passages. Like it was really a bare bones program. Talk about what that was like to turn your will and your life over to the care of God without much guidance on how to do so.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. Early on, they were so program oriented, like they had t shirts that said, you get sober, I'll stay clean. I'll never forget it. They were so passionate about the building of it. And there was the basic text, but there was definitely no step working guides. I mean, step working guide is even new to me as I progress in my story a little bit, because there was a big time I left the fellowship. Like I did so much service and everything and got married and found the love of my life, who I recently, just lost about 15 months ago after almost 35 years of marriage. And I left for a long time and then I came back again.
But you stayed clean.
100%. Because I didn't understand the level of my late wife Leslie's alcoholism till about a solid year into our marriage, my second marriage and my last one, that I figured she was just, like to party once in a while and get high and no problems, but it was so deep rooted. I was disappointed and upset and angry because what you're doing is you're going against everything I believe in. What I work so hard to change my life and to make something of myself. I made a covenant and a promise to my higher power that I was going to break the generational curse of shit men in my family line. I look back in old photos. There were no men there, from my great grandmother to my grandmother to Mommy Judy. And there were just the women. It's such a cunning and baffling and insidious disease. And from that point, when I learned and understood how deep Leslie's problems were, yeah, I helped her, I tolerated it, but I went on a tear very early in my marriage. The last 30 years of my marriage, I was faithful. I went on a tear for 3 or 4 years, at least 3 to 4 women a week for 3 to 4 years, till I bottomed out on it the way I bottomed out on drugs. And I said, you're turning into a horrible human being, just like your father was. And we don't understand. I didn't understand till I got clean the subconscious connections that we could develop in areas of that nature. It was a rude awakening. And from that point on, I never stepped out on her again. I loved her to this day. She never knew. I asked for grace and mercy from my higher power, and I've been forgiven. I don't hold the guilt. She never knew I would never want to hurt her. It was a struggle with Leslie and I. She started not one, two house fires in 14 months.
As a result of her using?
Yep.
Wow.
I had to, the whole upstairs was redone multiple times. It didn't matter what. I made a decision that I was going to be the one to break. I was far from perfect. Look at all the wrongdoings I did in my early marriage. Who are you not to forgive? Look at how you've been forgiven. Who are you not to forgive? Countless alcohol poisonings, rehabs, detoxes. We did it ourselves. Leslie, myself, my insurance people. I never ever gave up.
And so, what was that like to be so steadfast in your recovery, but to have a partner who was suffering so deeply? Was she ever involved in the fellowship?
Part of my recovery, how I left, was I would take care of her, and she was involved in the other fellowship. And I would be bringing her to meetings. It was like my service. We tried everything for 6 months of 2024. We were not one, not two, not three, but four-time cancer survivors. On top of all that, I loved like no one could love. You can't, I just, what you want me to stop loving? Kill me. That's the only way I give up. That's how deep it was. And I neglect, and I have to share because a part of my story. I stepped away from the NA fellowship and stayed clean because I'm with my partner every day. And it's like, boy, if that's not reassurance and like, my God, look at this. I see the act of addiction right in front of me every day. So I did what I could do, and I did briefly get involved in Al-Anon because I wasn't planted in the Nassau County Fellowship where I now live. It took a lot for me to come back after Leslie passed 15 months ago to come back into the rooms. I was sitting here looking at a meeting list. I said, I don't think I've ever been at this meeting. I'm going to go to this meeting. And that took a lot of nerve to get back up by myself. There's nobody here. Mom's not here. I'm my own man now. When I walked back in the rooms, I was broken. So I walk in the meeting and I sit down, I'm waiting for the meeting to start. And next thing you know, I hear, Bryan, a lot of people I knew from Queens have been out here for a long time. And now, you know, fast forward, I've replanted myself in Nassau County and I've met so many great people. It's a lot. So I asked a fellow I know for a very long time to sponsor me, and I'm back to square one again. I'm writing the steps. I have one sponsee. I've taken a couple of commitments. I'm a timer at one of my home groups. I'm the GSR in another one. And even this is service. I have to try to help people who need it. And look at all that I've been given and all that I have from surrendering to the fellowship and understanding my disease of addiction.
And so, how long would you say that your hiatus from the program was?
I'm going to say a few decades,
Mm.
a few decades. I always did my readings and I kept connected, but I was talking with my sponsor, and maybe some people who haven't been around for a long time will get the message that they can come back and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The same love and incredible fellowship and people are here for the taking and the waiting.
Mm-hmm.
They're still here for you.
So, during the time where you were caretaking, what were you doing for your recovery? How were you keeping yourself clean? Because, we all know that it's very difficult to keep your family member clean, keep, whoever in your life clean. We all know this. And so, what were you doing for your personal recovery during that time? How did you stay clean while trying to help somebody else manage the horrors of their addiction?
Great question. Personal commitment and perseverance. Because no matter what any fellowship offers us, the commitment to change your life and stay clean a day at a time has to come from you. I didn't give up. I made a covenant and a commitment to myself, to my higher power of my understanding, that I was going to be the type of man that would make my mom proud and my higher power proud. I have an inner fire and strength, basically willpower,
Mm-hmm. Straight
which
up
I'm
willpower.
not necessarily recommending because that's a tough thing to do.
You're very lucky because I don't think a lot of people in your position would have stayed clean if they didn't have a program, right?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I kind of did because I would go with her to her meetings, the anniversary. One time she did actually celebrate a year, but in retrospect and revelation through conversation, I found that she wasn't clean, but she was clean for most of it.
so recovery was still in your life, just not necessarily through the NA program per se.
Correct.
Hmm.
100%. I still, like she asked me, and if I showed you my Just for Today book, it has duct tape on it. And she said, could I use your Just for Today book? And she had various sponsors also. Some of them got rid of her. And she would come to me, well, Bryan, why are they doing it? I said, sweetheart, people are here to save their lives. And they see that you're just half-assedly going about things and not being serious.
Hmm.
And they don't want to be around people. They can't put their recovery in jeopardy. They want people who are committed to recovery.
Yeah, I'm committed to recovering.
Yeah.
So tell me what it's been like coming back in the fellowship, getting back in service, getting back in step work, building a network with people that you didn't have a chance to build with because you were, busy caretaking for your wife's addiction.
Yeah, yeah. It's been very good. Like, my sponsor is one of the guys I always liked, and we got on well. And it's like he almost came to me. He was like, well, he goes, I guess I'm going to be a sponsor. And I said, yeah, right. I mean, listen, I've learned how to live after 40 years, a day at a time. It's been really nice connecting. And there's not a lot of people who are around that long. It's not the world's biggest group. There's in the I'm going to say mid late 80s, there was a big AIDS epidemic in the rooms.
So talk about those, different ebbs and flows, right? We had the AIDS epidemic, we had the crack epidemic, we had the opioid crisis, we had COVID, all of these things that have come in and out of people's lives. Thankfully you weren't exposed to AIDS yourself, but victims of the disease.
Yeah, due to my dad's drug addiction, which I found out later down the road, I vowed to never stick a needle in my arm. So I had never smoked crack, methadone, because only drug addicts did that. And of course, I
You weren't an
wasn't a drug
addict.
addict, right?
Nah.
I really missed a lot of this stuff because I wasn't actively involved because I didn't replant till after the opioids. I didn't understand addiction when I was a young boy. I look back, the first time I drank, it was on a church retreat. I never did anything. I must have been maybe 12, 13 at the most. Never drank, never did anything. I drank and I blacked out. And I woke up in bed with one of the pastor's older daughters, which, listen, I got to be honest with you, looking at that, that wasn't one of the worst things. I said, there might be something here, you know, but looking back, I blacked out. I just drank till I blacked out. And the first time I did drugs, I'll never forget, I was the kid that everybody looked after, right? And it was in the, I'm going to say late 60s, like the Woodstock era. And now we're on a bus going to the beach, like long as my mom was comfortable with me going to the beach because everybody looked after me. We're going to the beach. And they peer pressured me into taking a quarter of a tab of acid. And that's the first drug I ever did. And I took it, and we were just in splits all day, cracking up and laughing. But my drug use didn't really kick in until my father came back into my life again. Because there were periods where he was in my, he left. He was a drummer and a jazz drummer, and he offered to helped me to start studying music, to be a sight reading drummer, which is very difficult. So I was allowed to go to Brooklyn on the train with my sticks and my books to take my drum lessons. And then I remember hanging out with him. And of course, listen, musicians always had great drugs, and I didn't know. And he goes, "Oh, you ever smoke pot?" And this and that. And he would give me this pot that I just like was amazing. And I'd be sitting home on the train going back from Brooklyn to Co-op City like a zombie. I'd be like, "Oh my God, look at I I fast forwarding again, in and out, and then he was out of my life again. Uh, and that was it. And the last time he came into my life was I was 6 months clean. And I got a call from my Aunt Sunny. I was 6 months clean. It was November, early 85, summerish. And I got a call around Live Aid. And I was going there with a girl I was dating in recovery who was an attorney in Philly who invited me. And I got a call that he had died.
Mm.
And that was one of the also contributing factors that solidified my commitment, even though of that long absence from the program, of not using no matter what. I had to go out to Freeport, New York, to claim his things. He was on welfare. He died alone. He really had nothing. And it was such a powerful sight and message to me because I was already 6 months in, and the support I got from the people in the program was overwhelming. Like, Bryan, do you want me to come with you? And I was like, no, I'm cool with it. So I had to go to the police station, and I did what I had to do. And I actually, in my basement, I still have that little box. So it was like, wow, that's what will be in store for me if I continue to act and be like that. I don't regret any choices I made. And I can honestly tell you that if I would have chosen that other trade and occupation, I would not be sitting here. But I am grateful that in my way, it's still involved in my life as a way of expression. It's a gift to be able to do that. Not everybody has that, whether it be for me or anybody else. It's just something that's very cool to have.
For sure. I myself am a musician, and I love being around other musicians that just don't like the, sex, drugs, rock and roll lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough thing to navigate. And we both performed actually at a fundraiser.
Really nice to bond with you in that way. I'm so grateful that you got to share your story with us and that you got honest with us about what it was like to, get clean in the early days and stay clean despite, having a partner in active addiction. And I do believe that, your early foundation in the fellowship probably cemented, your recovery a bit and kept you clean. So I'm very glad that you stayed clean and that you're back.
I hope that something I said, helped somebody, whether you knew you've left the program and are hesitant about coming back. It's as good as ever and as strong as ever. And, I just thank you for letting me have this time with you.
Thank you for sharing your story. I love you so much, Bryan, and thank you for being a friend. Absolutely. So thank you for being on. Thank you for sharing your story. I love you so
You're
much,
welcome.
Bryan,
My
and thank you
pleasure.
for being a friend to me and doing this service for us. So we really appreciate you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you, Bryan. The Voices of Recovery podcast is an independent production of the Works of Wisdom. We welcome your questions and donations via PayPal at voicesofrecoverypod@gmail.com. This podcast is an independent production and is not affiliated with, associated with, authorized by, endorsed by, or in any way officially connected with Narcotics Anonymous or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. While NA literature may be read during episodes for the purpose of supporting recovery, such use does not constitute an official endorsement or representation by Narcotics Anonymous. In accordance with NA tradition, the NA name is not to be used to endorse or be affiliated with any outside enterprise, and no such endorsement or affiliation is implied. Music is by Sage. Thanks for listening to the Voices of Recovery podcast.